Good morning, and welcome to Sunday morning. For over 15 years at the Marxist Forum. For over 15 years, we've had these programs religiously every Sunday at the Marxist Forum. We used to meet at a brick and mortar place, the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library in Oakland, California. But we're now on Zoom, so we've changed our name from the Marxist Library to the Marxist Forum, but it's the same folks, and we welcome you again. But now that we are on Zoom, we can say good afternoon and even good evening because we have a national and international audience. Programs are put on by the Institute for the Critical Study of Society. And I'm on the program committee. My name is Roger Harris. And the ICSS, you can find out more about our programs, what's coming up on our website. And our website is ICSS, the initials ICSS, Marx.org, ICSmarx.org. You can find out about future programs. You can look back and see the past programs, write-ups on the past programs, and YouTubes on the past programs. And also, we invite you to leave comments on our website and also to sign up, if you haven't already signed up, on our mailing list to get the weekly announcements of our programs. And also, we have some financial responsibilities, so we always welcome donations, and you can do that through the website as well. Now, today, we're going to talk about what's happening in Syria. And that is a story that is, what's happened in Syria is really a geopolitical game changer, but we're hearing very little about what is happening actually in Syria, and particularly many voices are silenced, I should say. So our speaker, Dan Kovalik, will be telling us about what's happening there. Dan just got back from Syria. Dan is an international human rights advocate. He's a lawyer, and he has written a number of books about the machinations of U.S. imperialism relating to Nicaragua, Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. Most recently, this book is really a must-read, is The Case for Palestine, Why It Matters and Why Should You Care? And he's also written books on the progressive case against counterculture and how the U.S. violates international law, amongst his other books. He teaches international human rights at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. He graduated from the Columbia University School of Law, and he has served as in-house counsel for the United Steelworkers, AFL-CIO, until 2019. He's now retired from that job, but he's more than active as a full-time activist. And amongst his many activities, he's on the executive committee of the U.S. Peace Council. So Dan, it's really a pleasure to invite you back to the library. I know you've spoken here a number of times, and we are so much interested in hearing what you have to say. So the program is yours.
Thank you so much, Roger. I always appreciate being here, and I appreciate your kind words. Just one amendment to the biography. I don't teach at the law school anymore. They didn't renew my contract because of they weren't crazy about my views about Russia. So there you go. In any case, yes. So I went to Syria, and at times I'll speak in kind of veiled language. I mean, because this is being recorded. So many people there are living in fear. So I can't reveal at times details because they can put people in danger. Even I can't. At least I'd be happy to tell you privately, but I won't even say publicly who. I was hired to go there as a correspondent, and I won't even say who hired me, because I did say that on a interview, and someone who helped me in Syria, asked that be deleted from the video, which it was. So in any case, I was hired to do reporting from there, and I flew to Beirut and was driven to Syria. That's a very, for many years, that was really the only way to get to Syria. That's not true anymore. After Assad was overthrown, major airlines have come back to the Damascus airport, so one can actually fly there in and out now. But I went the old-fashioned way by land. I applied when I was hired to do the job. I was told by folks in Syria that it'd be very easy to get press credentials from the new government because they were pretty much handing them out like hotcakes at that point. And pretty much all the press they were getting was good. The mainstream press is just fawning all over the new government, despite the fact that basically the new government is an offshoot of al-Qaeda, but no one seems to care. And but then as I was about to leave for Lebanon, I was told a new procedure was put in place that I would actually have to apply online. Am I seeing people are not hearing me well or not seeing me well? Is there a problem? I don't know.
There's a little syncing problem between the audio and the video, but I'm not sure. You might have a slow internet connection or something. I'm not sure. I'm not sure we can correct it, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
So we should just continue.
Okay. And so I had to apply online for press credentials. Long and short of it is I was never given press credentials. I was actually officially declined my credentials, which made the work there more difficult and more dangerous for some of the people I was with. But we pressed forward and did the best we could. What is happening in Syria? First of all, it's a very chaotic situation, I would say. I think there was amongst certain groups of people, certainly initially, there was some exuberance about the new government only because it was a change. And, things have been very bad in Syria for a long time economically, especially because, well, mostly because of the very draconian sanctions that the U.S. imposed that made it impossible for Syria to get basic goods and services and, frankly, to be able to rebuild from the war. And a large swaths of the country are just in ruins. In fact, I put some pictures online and people thought I was in Gaza. That's how bad it is in parts of Syria. And U.S. officials were very clear that they did not want Syria to rebuild, while Assad was president. That was one of the reasons for the sanctions. They thought that would be a tool to either force him to amend his ways or that it would undermine him so much that he would be toppled. And really, that's what happened. I mean, just to be clear, what I think I understand, I don't know all the behind the scenes of what happened. That is still being revealed as we speak. But what I do know is that this was not a popular revolution. This was, I think you could say, a coup, really, that was carried forth by this group, HTS group, again, which is renamed. It was an al-Qaeda, it was the al-Nusra Front of al-Qaeda. That's what it was, and that's what it is, but it has a new name. And basically, in a blitzkrieg type way, they were able to take over the government, and largely because it's very clear that there was some treachery in the high echelons of the military that essentially they did give stand-down orders to the troops who were ready to fight, but they were told not to fight, and basically HTS entered Damascus completely unmolested by the time they got to Damascus. Why there was treachery, who the traitors were, that isn't all known, but it's clear that that's what happened. And I have friends who were in the militias that supported the Syrian army. They're Alawites, so they were in an Alawite militia that was supporting Assad against who they viewed were terrorists, and they were absolutely baffled by what happened in terms of, again, these stand down orders that basically left Syria open to what happened. You may have seen, again, I know I'm giving a lot of background, and I hope it's interesting for you. I see Roger shaking his head. I hope this is interesting. The most interesting story that's been told as of to date is by Assad's son. Some of you may have seen what he said happened. And what he said happened was that when HTS began their assault against Aleppo, that was the first town they took, there was no plans for his father and his family to leave. He backs up his father's claim that his father at some point went to Latakia to oversee the military maneuvers to defend the country. And they believed that they were going to be able to put this down easily. And again, his view and his story is that there was treachery that didn't allow for the defense to happen, because, again, there were generals who were ordering stand downs, and Assad was unable to counter that. And again, his claim is that Assad had no plans on leaving the country, but basically at some point was told by the Russians, if you don't leave, you're going to end up like Gaddafi. You will be dead, and it's time to go. That seems to at least jibe with my understanding with what happened. A lot of people do feel betrayed by Assad because he left, because, again, he left the country defenseless. Again, and also in the absence of fully understanding the dynamics of what happened there. I will tell you an interesting little tidbit. So I'm friends with the South African ambassador to Lebanon and Syria. I had dinner with him twice in Damascus, and he told me something interesting. He was the last ambassador to get credentials from Assad. He got his credentials on a Saturday. I think it was November 26th, I think. I'll have to look at my calendar, but around then. And he said it was on a Saturday, which is interesting. That's a holiday. Saturday in the Arab world is like our Sunday. So the fact that he would even give credentials on a Saturday was a bit surprising to the ambassador. And he was given full pomp and circumstance, had a band and all that. And he got to spend an hour with Assad, which he said is, and he's been a diplomat for years. He said that's a long, long time for an ambassador to have with a head of state. That's unique. And he said Assad was on the top of his game. Looking back on that, there was no indication he had that Assad had any plans going anywhere. And within about a week, Assad was gone. So that's very interesting to me as well. So this HTS group, again, takes over unmolested. They have about 30,000 troops, and they have within HTS, within those 30,000 troops, there are 26 different factions. And there are factions within those factions. So it is a very, I would say, fairly decentralized organization that is attempting to run Syria. And it's unstable. And many are wondering whether, in fact, they will be able to hold on to power. They've fired about 1 million public employees. The others aren't getting paid, or if they are, they're not getting paid often. They've also made it clear that Alawites will not be allowed in public service. So there's a big war against the Alawites in Syria right now. If people don't know what an Alawite is or what the issue is with the Alawites, so during the war against Assad, the battle cry of the terrorists that were trying to topple Assad, their battle cry was Alawites to the grave, Christians to Beirut. So they wanted to kill the Alawites and get rid of the Christians, but not necessarily kill them. And why? Because Christians are seen by this Sunni extremist groups as infidels, and that's bad. But what's worse are Alawites who are Muslim, who they consider to be apostates because they drink. In fact, they drink alcohol, wine as part of their ceremonies, and the women don't cover themselves. So they are seen as worse than infidels because they are Muslims who don't practice what they view as the proper faith correctly. And so, and by the way, again, most of you may know that Assad was an Alawite himself. And so Alawites, in a way, are a double threat because, one, they're apostates, and two, Assad came from Alawites. So for those reasons, Alawites are being killed, particularly in the city of Homs. There's kidnappings almost every day and massacres of Alawites if not every day, every other day or so. And I'm in touch. I met with some Alawites in Syria, of course, and again, they are scared to death. One person I met, when I was having dinner with the ambassador, she called him on his cell phone, and I could hear her on the other line. She was crying because a friend of hers who's Alawite had just been kidnapped and murdered, and she herself had just escaped a kidnapping. She's an instructor. Her friend was a professor in the same university, and a student of hers asked to meet with her. And before she went to that meeting, other students intervened and said, "Don't go with that man. He's planning to kidnap and kill you." And so she was obviously very upset, and I'm in almost daily communication with her now, and she says that the kidnappings are increasing, and the Alawites are living in really mortal terror right now. So these terrorists are carrying out their slogan of putting Alawites in the grave, and also sending Christians to Beirut. The Christians are being more subtly ousted from the country through taxations, through people being someone told me to do something. You might pause and turn off HD. Okay, and obviously this problem is persisting. Where would I do that? Should I do that?
On your video, the up arrow, do video
Yes,
settings.
I see that.
Okay, then see where it says HD, uncheck that box.
Okay. Let's see. First of all, I'm going to switch over to something, and then let me see. Video settings I should go to, I guess.
Yeah.
And okay.
Turn off HD.
Let me see if I can see that.
If you don't, then let's just continue.
Stop my, okay, hide, receiving, send. 1 second. I'm not seeing that.
Okay, just go ahead and continue.
All right, so I'm very sorry about
That's okay. I don't think it's for everybody. It's just some people are having problems. Okay.
Okay. So I went, to illustrate that, I went to the town of Malula, which this is the third time I've been there. And Malula is about an hour outside of center city Damascus. It is, it was really a storybook town built into the mountains. I mean, it really just is stunning, stunning little city, little town. And it's one of the last cities in the world that speaks Aramaic, the language of Jesus, which is, for Christians, a very big deal. Many pilgrims, it's been a place where many pilgrims visit. They have some ancient churches there, some of the oldest churches in the world. About 80, my last count, 80 of the 350 families, Christian families that live there, 80 families have fled Malula. Which is not surprising. The people who took over the government, this HTS, when they were the al-Nusra Front, many of you may know that they, along with some other of these terrorist groups, tried to destroy Malula. They kidnapped the nuns there. They destroyed many icons and relics in the churches. They tried to burn down the churches. They were unsuccessful because they're largely stone, thank God. But they destroyed a tomb of a saint in one of the churches. And by the way, it was, along with the Syrian army, it was Hezbollah that came to defend the Christians. If you don't know that fact, it's an interesting fact about Hezbollah, that they view themselves as the defender of all faiths. And I didn't realize that till not long ago, and I find that a fascinating fact. But the same people who attacked the town, terrorized the town, are the same people that are now in charge. Now, the people now in charge say, oh, well, we used to chop people's heads off when we were younger, but we don't do that anymore. That was just, boys will be boys type of thing. But a lot of Christians, one, don't believe that. And also there have been incidents, again, of Christians being tortured, and some groups trying to tax them. And if they don't pay the tax, they're beaten and whipped and this sort of thing. And again, some families that I know personally who left the country didn't even wait to see what was going to happen, because, again, this group is a known quantity and they're afraid. And a lot of Christians believe that Christianity will not survive in Syria after this. The new government they trashed the old constitution of Assad from 2012, I believe it was, which is a very socially progressive constitution. And while they have not put in a new constitution, they've made it clear they are going to have an Islamic state, and a form of Islam that they view as proper. Again, that will not be Alawite, that will not be Shia. It's going to be a Sunni form of Islam, and it's certainly not going to be Christian. And so the pluralism that reigned under the Assads, whatever you think about the Assads, they were pluralistic. They did allow for these other faiths. That is not going to, it won't exist like that in Syria if this group stays in power. Now, they said that they're going to respect other people's rights, but it will be an Islamic state. How they're going to pull that off, I don't know. No one knows, because the new leader, Jelani, has now said there won't be elections for at least 4 years, possibly 5 years. And so, and by the way, he also made this very troubling statement that the violence that I've mentioned that's been happening, the kidnappings, the murders, that this is natural, and that he anticipates that sort of violence will continue for the next 2 to 3 years, which is quite troubling. When the head of state, of course, he's a self-proclaimed head of state, but still, when the ostensible head of state says that sort of violence is natural and will continue, that more or less is a green light for it to continue. Obviously, he's more or less endorsing that violence. So things, again, while there was, amongst some people an initial excitement that things could change for the better in Syria, I would say that most people now don't. That optimism's gone. People are very wary about the future. And one thing that's happening is that the state of Syria, as we know it, is going away. I mean, because Israel's taken over a huge swath of the south. They're building a military base in the south. The Turks are building 2 military bases in the north. The U.S. still occupies the northeast. And the new government has even issued a new map of Syria, which does not include the Golan Heights and does not include a part of the north, which the Turks now are occupying. So this new government has already ceded parts of Syria away. And even within the parts that are not being occupied by foreign occupiers, not all those are even being held by HTS. ISIS, which, ISIS and al-Qaeda had a falling out some time ago. ISIS controls Palmyra. You might recall that when they controlled Palmyra before, they destroyed many ancient ruins, Roman ruins and others. You might remember the very famous museum curator who was killed trying to defend the antiquities, some that were hidden away, and he died refusing to give up the location of those antiquities to ISIS because they would destroy them. So I'm not sure what's happening in Palmyra now, but it's not being controlled by the government in Damascus. So it's not a good situation. It's a very unstable situation. As I said, the religious minorities are very much in fear, and rightly so. And it seems like the violence is getting worse, not getting better. I met with some Christian priests, and again, I won't give their names or titles. One was fairly high up in the church, and he gave me a lot of time. He said he had stopped giving interviews because of out of fear, but he did want to talk to me, and he did, though he has not yet agreed to formally publicly release our interview. So he will remain nameless, but he was very articulate and very interesting guy. He said a few very interesting things. First of all, he said, it was the U.S. He says, in my opinion, it was the U.S. that brought the HTS here. And he says, as far as I'm concerned, they can take them. And he also was of the opinion this was not a revolution. You could not call what happened a revolution because this was not a mass uprising. This was, an armed group that came and took over the government with almost no resistance. He said that before we had a dictatorship, he said now we have something worse, which is a government by these extremists. And he is very worried, again, for the future of Christianity in Syria. The other thing he pointed out, again, this is not even controversial, but again, the way he put things was a way I, didn't necessarily think about things. And what he said is, look, this new group, this HTS group, he said they can call them anything, call themselves anything they want. But he said they don't represent the Syrian people. He said they can't. He said, look, first of all, about a third of them are foreign fighters, including from places as far-flung as China, Uyghurs, but other nationalities as well. It's you can tell they're not from around here because many don't even speak Arabic. He said, so that alone makes them, again, not indigenous and not representative of the Syrian people. And he says, and frankly, to the extent they're from Syria, almost all of them are from Idlib, one province in Syria. So this group from Idlib of, significantly foreign fighters took over because they were allowed to take over, because there was no resistance. So this is not a revolution. This is not, some blossoming of democracy. In fact, it's the opposite in many ways. Now, are some people happy with it? Sure. But again, my sense is that most people, even among Sunnis who would, some of which would support these folks, are not happy. They're very worried about the direction the country's going in, because, a lot of people will tell you, and a lot of people told me without being prompted, that, look, before this war started, I didn't know if you were an Alawite or a Shia or a Sunni or a Christian, and I wouldn't ask you. That was not polite to do. No one cared. But these religious divisions were, they were exploited and exacerbated by the invaders, and that's what they were, invaders, foreign invaders that were backed by the United States, backed by Israel, backed by Turkey, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia. I mean, this was a world war against Syria. Let's be very clear about that. When I was in Syria in 2021, I was told that amongst those fighting against Assad, they collected 84 different passports from 84 different countries. So this was it's not to say there wasn't discontent and legitimate discontent that was being aired in 2011 against Assad, but the fighting that came about, brutal fighting, again, was not indigenous to Syria. It was brought from the outside, and it destroyed Syria. It destroyed Syria economically, infrastructure-wise, and it destroyed the society. That pluralistic society was destroyed. And now, without Assad, you now have these ethnic killings and kidnappings, which are just disgusting and terrible, and very few people are talking about it. Now, someone on the comment section correctly said that this HTS group is, while they have no interest in fighting Israel, and they have no interest in defending Syria's sovereign territory against countries like Israel or Turkey, they do have the wherewithal to, again, kill Alawites, and they have the wherewithal to do cross-border raids into Lebanon, which, again, is the person on the chat said, they're basically doing the bidding of Israel in doing that. And Lebanon is now going to be much harder to defend than it used to be. It used to be that when Israel attacked Lebanon, they had to do it from the south, and that allowed Hezbollah to, they could concentrate all their soldiers and firepower on the south. Now they're going to have to defend the Syrian border, especially if there's another big incursion into Lebanon, if there's a big war that comes. It's going to be harder to defend Lebanon. So, again, I think it's fair to say this has been a disaster for the people of Syria and Lebanon, certainly. I think also a disaster for the Palestinians, who were getting support from Assad. One of the first things, it's funny, and I'm, everyone on this call will, have heard this statement. They always say, "Oh, the first thing the communists do when they take over, they take away our guns," which is, of course, not true. I mean, in places like Cuba, in fact, they started handing out guns. But that's kind of truism that people say, but they say it as a pejorative way of criticizing communists. But the first thing the HTS did is start taking people's guns away, including the guns away from the armed Palestinian groups that are in Syria, that Assad allowed to be in Syria, to freely operate in Syria, including with weapons. And one of the first things the HTS did was take away their guns. These are not friends of the Palestinian people. They're not friends of Arabic people. It's again, very strange for a group that claims to be an Islamic, militant group. They really are friends with Israel, and they've never attacked Israel. Israel always brags about that. Well, why haven't they? Because they're a tool of Israel in the United States and Turkey. And they've shown that. They've shown that since they've taken power. Again, they did not defend. They're not defending their own territory. Israel is now within, I've heard different numbers, but anywhere between 15 and 30 kilometers outside of Damascus. And who knows? Maybe they'll take over Damascus. I don't know. But the point is, the HTS is not defending against that sort of incursion by Israel, because they are a creature of the West. And so, while you'll certainly meet many Syrians in the diaspora who support Jelani, I think those that have to live under him are not, again, by and large, are not happy by now. The number I saw, here's the latest number I saw from the UN, is that certainly well over 100,000 people have left Syria since the toppling of Assad, and maybe 250,000 people have come back, which is a very small number because there's about 7 million people who fled the war, who fled Syria and the war. So not many have come back. A lot have left. I think a lot of Syrians are taking, at best, a wait and see attitude. Someone asked, did any world leaders refuse to meet Jolani? I think Iran has not met with him, but that may also be because he won't meet with them. Iran is now, persona non grata in Syria. Their embassy was trashed. It's empty now. I would say they're the number one, bad guy as far as the HTS is concerned. So I don't see Iran having relations with Jelani, and I don't believe even now the U.S. I don't think they have official relations with him, though they seem okay with him. As far as I can tell, but we'll see. We'll see how all that shakes out. Someone wanted me to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm not an expert on the Muslim Brotherhood. I know that Great Britain helped found it in 1932, a long time ago, to counter socialist secular leadership in the Arab world, in the Muslim world. And Hamas grew out of the Muslim Brotherhood. Of course, the Muslim Brotherhood was in charge of Egypt for a while until the coup that Sisi came to power in. But they play a strange role in the Middle East. In fact, Hamas, again, which is, a Muslim Brotherhood adjacent group, you may know, actually, they participated in the attempt to unseat Assad. And it caused a lot of, as you might imagine, tension between Assad and Hamas.
So, Dan,
yeah.
At this point, I think it might be better to take questions in the Q&A rather than answering ones explicitly in the chat. But so maybe finish up, if you would, your your formal presentation, and then we can move on to the Q&A.
Yes. So I guess I'm more or less done at this point. I mean, I left feeling pretty dark. I've been frankly feeling a bit dark after that trip. It's, you know, it's not a great atmosphere there in Syria. Certainly a place like Malula, it's just completely depressing. There's no cars on the roads. There's no pilgrims going to those churches. It's completely empty. For a lot of people, a pall has now been cast over the country. And it's still not rebuilt. I mean, it is very sad. I mean, again, it's a very sad situation in terms of the infrastructure. It's not a happy place, really. And, you know, the West did that to that country. It's really, it's shameful what the West did to this very beautiful, historic country that may not exist as we've known it. It may not ever exist in the way that we've known it. I'm not excited to go back, to be totally honest. Some of the people I'm working with don't feel safe because they worked with me, and I'm not happy about that either. But I didn't hire them, so I mean, I don't think it's my fault, but it is what it is. So there you go. That's my presentation in chief. I hope I gave you some valuable information, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Dan.